Actually, it's live now.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I actually I just yeah and loaded up.
All right. Thank you, Martin, and everybody who is joining in on our Zoom platform, as well as we're restreaming live Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we're here as part of the Ask the Building Expert Masterclass webinar series. What's the topic? Calculating the cost of a change order. Um, Interesting enough, I've gotten a bunch of inquiries to kind of talk about this subject because there's still some things that need to be discussed, and there could be some misunderstandings on what's going on and money part and things like that. So we're going to be talking about some real numbers, fair pricing, and construction, keeping it clear for everyone. And this webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection, uh, a Hawaii-based construction management company. We do building inspections, property inspections, construction management, all that kind of thing, construction consultation, things like that. Um, Let me go through here. So the title is Calculating the Cost of a Change, and it could be including a change order. What is a change order? Well, it's any kind of change to the original agreement. Now, when I say original agreement, before I start getting into the nuts and bolts of a change order, I want to let you folks know that the basis of a lot of disagreements and arguments and confusion, like at the end of the project or even throughout the project, could be a lack of agreement or understanding as to what the agreement actually was. So that's why it's always good to have a construction contract, which is the agreement in writing as far as what the type of work's going to be done and how it's going to be paid for. So the contract is the basic element of the start of any kind of construction work, no matter how small or large the type of work is. And by law, and some of you that are watching maybe in other states other than Hawaii or maybe other countries outside of the United States. So it's good to check with your own contractor's license authority, whatever that department is. And every state has what's called like a contractor's license board or that type of entity that actually governs the work of contractors, and they can basically tell you what should be in a written contract. Okay, so in Hawaii, there's certain elements that need to be in the contract, need to be stated. And this information is required by law. So if one piece of information is not in the contract, that contractor is in violation of the contractor's licensing law. And it's obvious some of these elements or information. For one, the contractor's name, full name, their license number, the address of the property, a list of what exactly is going to be done in the construction work, and to include, now, this may not be actual construction, but if you're doing renovation or building a new house, the list of what's going to be included, such as appliances, a stove, washer, dryer, dishwasher, things like that, that should be listed. The other thing is um, a listing of the type of work that's going to be done or the type of work included. Does it include roofing, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, concrete, that kind of thing? And then if it's not broken down, the total cost. So there needs to be a total number as far as the base bid or base price. The other thing is that there needs to be a construction schedule and not some words that I'm going to be done in 8 months. Okay, that's not enough. The schedule has to state the date that the work's going to start and the date the work's going to finish. And a lot of times contractors don't want to put the dates in because they want time just in case there's delays and all that. So they're not held to, the end date completion of construction. The other thing that needs to be included is how is the contractor going to get paid? Is he going to get a percentage of money up front as a down payment or deposit? Is he going to request payment every month? And if so, how much is it going to be? Or is he going to get paid according to percentage of the work done? Percentage of the work done means you pour the concrete, the foundation. Okay, that's a percentage. When you complete, you get paid X amount. Framing, carpentry, roofing, rough-in, electrical, and plumbing. So all these would be construction milestones as far as completion and when they're going to get paid. Now, it's easier if the contractor divides up the total amount and you pay every month a set amount. Okay, but also you could base it on percentage also. So there's different ways, but it needs to be stated in the contract. Okay, now there's these elements that I mentioned that needs to be in the contract according to state law. The other thing is that how you're going to deal with problems. So let's say after the construction's finished, some of the windows don't work, right? Brand new windows, or the roof leaks, or the toilet doesn't flush or something. There has to be language in the contract stating that if there's an issue, you have to send the contractor a written notice of the problem and give the contractor X many days to get back to you. And normally there's an inspection first as to, well, we got to check it out and see what the problem is, and then a time period by which to fix the problem. Now, believe it or not, that law is called the Contractor Repair Act, and it was actually promoted by contractors because the bottom line is that you cannot sue the contractor unless you follow the provisions of the Contractor Repair Act. So in other words, if the contractor doesn't go back and fix the problem after you called, 5 times, you can't automatically sue the contractor for not getting back to you. Okay, there's clear instructions as to what to do, and it has to be followed to a T. Otherwise, it's hard for you to recover any damages. Okay, so if you're in doubt, you go to your contractor's license board. In Hawaii, there's a Department of Commerce Affairs, DCCA, and they can help you with what needs to be in the construction contract. So do not sign a contract unless it has all those elements that are required by law. Now, if the amount of information is required by law and there's 10 items, you could have 50 other items in the contract. The more information you have in the contract, the better, because it's in writing, right? And it's hard to dispute if it's in writing. If you don't have anything in writing, good luck trying to recover any damages or things like that. So that's the preface to this whole change order issue that I'm going to be talking about, because without a construction contract, it's hard to enforce extra charges and all that. And my audience here is not only homeowners, it's everybody included. So let's take a look. So this masterclass webinar, who is this actually for? This information is for contractors, general contractors, builders, subcontractors, architects, engineers, owners, managers. And when I say managers, that would include property managers, condo association managers, site managers, resident managers, anybody who's in charge of construction work. It could be realtors or your rental agent. Also attorneys, anyone dealing with change orders or having to deal with construction. Okay, this information is for everybody. So why changes happen? When changes happen, changes usually are pretty much understood. At the end of every project, there's probably going to be a number of changes going on or that happen. Changes are part of construction. That's, the norm. No one loves them, but they happen. What matters is how we handle these changes. Okay, examples of typical changes include weather conditions, right? If the contractor starts a project and all of a sudden, there's 10 days of rain, of course they can't continue working, right? So the schedule would be automatically extended. So even if the contractor says they're going to finish in 8 months, if you had 10 days of rain or other occurrences, an earthquake, tsunami, big hurricane that affected workers, according to the contract, the time schedule already gets extended to make up for that loss of days. Okay, there's project scope creep, plan updates. Now, the word creep in this context isn't like for Halloween, somebody dresses up like a monster and they start chasing you and, oh, look at that creep. So the creep in the construction terminology is anything that would affect the project schedule. And it could be an owner decides to change something, or it could be the building inspector coming in and saying, hey, you know what? You got to do this now. This isn't right. This isn't to code. You got to add another lock here or whatever. Okay, so that's part of the whole issue. That's just construction terminology. So we're dealing with change orders 101. So let's break it down. I'll try to be very simple, not too complicated. What is a change order anyway? A change order is any change to the original contract. So if the original contract was for 500,000 and there was some kind of change, right? And now it's $520, the $20 becomes a change order, by virtue of the definition. So a change order is a written agreement to modify the original terms of the construction contract. It can involve changes in scope, cost, schedule, or all three. think of it as an official way to say something changed. Here's how we're adjusting. Okay, now notice that I use the word written. When I said a change order is a written agreement, it could also be a verbal agreement, but verbal agreements usually don't hold up that well, especially if you don't have any written documentation. Okay, so why would you agree? And when I say you, it could be the homeowner, property manager, it could be the contractor. Agree to anything in a verbal or oral fashion that's not in writing, especially if it's more than $20. The $20 is just a example amount I threw out there, but usually change orders could amount to thousands of dollars and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. It doesn't make sense to have it verbal agreement because people forget. Or let's say the person that you were dealing with, who is like the project manager of the construction company, quits or retires and he's not there anymore, then you got to deal with somebody else, right? And they don't know what's going on. So word of advice, get everything in writing, even if it's $20, right? A text or email would be okay, right? But if it's thousands of dollars, I would follow up with some kind of paperwork. And you could even title it change order on the top and then list down what the change is. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about the specifics of what to write down. Why pricing a change order matters. Okay, now this is very important. Pricing a change order correctly avoids disputes, protects profit margins, and ensures transparency. When I give seminars to contractors, architect, engineers, contractors mostly, this is what I cover with them. When you're talking about a change order, you have to make sure everything's written down. And this is your piece of paper that could avoid getting sued later, right? And also helps you protect your money and make sure you get paid for the work that you're doing. If the change order is underpriced, the contractor loses money. For instance, right? In my $20 example, if it costs the contractor $30 to do that one work, but the change order is for $20, the contractor just lost money, lost $10, right? If it's overpriced, the owner may feel taken advantage of, leading to mistrust or even lawsuits, litigation, arbitration, mediation. So in my $20 example, if the contractor charged $50 and the owner feels that it should have been $20, the owner is not happy because the owner's saying, look, I overpaid by $30 here, right? So where is the fine line here? What is the actual amount, right, that we should be talking about? Before we get into that, here's what each side wants. The contractor's side, contractor's goal is to be made whole. They want compensation for labor, materials, overhead, and any scheduling delays caused by this particular change. The owner's goal is to pay a fair value, no more, no less. They want confidence that the price in the change order reflects real costs, not inflated figures or made up amounts, so that the contractor actually gets more money than what they're really entitled to. So the bottom line here is that a successful change order is one that feels fair and justified to both sides. Now, that may be easy to say, it's harder to actually do or complete. how do you even price a change order? Okay, there's different ways. There's unit cost, time and materials, lump sum, and cost plus. Unit price is for each item, there's a price. And when I say each item, it's a unit description. Okay. Time and materials is how much time is it going to take for the work to be done, and what kind of materials is needed to be used. Okay. And you add the cost of the time, which is the labor, and then you add the materials together. That's going to be your figure. Lump sum is just, okay, here's the amount that I'm going to charge you for this type of work. And then cost plus is whatever it costs a contractor, right? The contractor's cost, then you add in the percentage, which could be 10%, 15%, or whatever the percentage is, to the basic actual construction costs. And that would be the contractor's overhead and profit. Okay, so some more details on what I just explained. Unit price is best for repetitive or measurable tasks. Example, concrete per cubic yard, things like that. Easy to calculate, there's a clear scope. It's not ideal for complex changes. Time and materials is best when the scope is unclear. You don't know exactly what needs to be done. It's normally used for emergency repairs where it's like a fire or flood that the contractor goes in and does the work. Just say, I just want the work done. Calculate how much time and materials, and we'll work it out. So it's a flexible, fast approval. The downside is it can lead to cost overruns without anybody checking, without oversight. What works best? Well, there's actually lump sum, best for well-defined changes. Adding a new door opening or adding a new door, well, it's pretty easy. You can predict the cost. Okay. The lump sum method may require more upfront planning, but if it's small, not too much. And the cost plus is best for complex or revolving construction projects. The cost breakdown is transparent because the contractor would need to provide all his paperwork, labor, materials, everything, taxes, and then also paperwork on what the cost of his materials are. And then you add all those up and check out what his overhead costs is going to be. So the breakdown of costs is transparent, but there's less incentive to control costs because if the contractor knows he can do whatever he wants and you're going to pay for it as a homeowner, it's like he can't lose on the job. So what works best? Well, we don't know. It depends on the situation. Not all change orders are the same. There's a standard change order versus an impact change order. So let's talk about the main types of change orders. A standard change, add a light fixture, is straightforward, limited in scope, easy to price and schedule. The impact change, delay causes rework for 3 trades, maybe rework or maybe just new work. Not just added work, but a ripple effect causing schedule shifts, labor conflicts, and extra costs across multiple trades. So here's an example. So let's say there's an addition being made. The contractor's adding to the main house, and the addition is a family room. And according to the plans, there's 2 light fixtures that would be installed. And half the ceiling is finished, right? The other half still doesn't have drywall, but the electrician went in and installed um, two light fixtures following the plan. And they turned it on, and the owner decided that he wanted additional lighting, so he wanted to add another light fixture that wasn't on the original plan. And the light fixture itself cost $200. Okay, so question is the contractor entitled to bill for $100? Because that was the additional cost of the additional light fixture. The answer is yes, because that was the extra cost, right? But what about things that are attributed to that extra light fixture that could be problematic and could be additional costs relative to that one new light fixture? And you might ask, so what are you talking about? Okay, so they don't have the light fixture on site because it wasn't in the plans. Okay, so somebody has to figure out what brand that light fixture was and go to the home and garden store or wherever they're going to buy the light fixture, City Mill, Home Depot, Lowe's, and buy the light fixture. Okay, so let's say it takes the guy half an hour to go to the fixture store, find the fixture, wait in line for half an hour, and drive half an hour back to the job site. Right there, you racked up, what, an hour and a half of time? And what if the guy, that worker that went to the store to buy it, and his rate of pay is $50 an hour, right? So now you got to add the person's $50 an hour time times 3, which is the actual cost, right? In addition to the price of the light fixture. Now you have a running tab, okay? Now the electrician's there, and he left because he didn't know he installed the two. Now he has to come back when the drywall's up. So when is he going to come back? So now you got the electrician who charges $100 an hour, has to go back there to install one light fixture. So now in addition to $200, you got $150, you got another $100 and whatever the over. So all of a sudden, one $200 light fixture becomes $600 or more. That's the change order idea. Okay, so it's not like, well, it only costs $200, so I'll pay the $200. No, that's not what's happening. There's all these different things that go into play, right? And what happens if the electrician, let's say the drywall was up, and the electrician has time, so he stops by and he installs the light fixture. Okay, all right, fine, done. And then the painter goes in and goes, hey, wait a minute, I didn't even paint this ceiling. I didn't know there was going to be a light fixture here. And now I got to go spend extra time taping around the light fixture so I can cut my paint lines because you know, I don't want to paint the cover of the light fixture and all that. So now you got more work for the painter, more time that adds. So this is just a very simple example of a very simple change order. Okay. Now, some of the projects that I work on, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of change orders. On one project, we had $1.3 million change order because it was spalling repair. And it's unknown and we didn't know the extent. So we have to, you know, keep working. Otherwise, we would stop the project and go home, right? And it'll never get done. So it just depends on the type of work. Spalling repair project is unknown. You don't know until you actually get there. If you're doing a renovation of a new house or an addition, building a new house, it's pretty easy for the contractor to figure out what the cost is. okay, as long as there's no changes, but there could be, right? The tough stuff, delay, inefficiency, acceleration, anytime, like, the light fixture example that I mentioned, there's a delay, it costs time and it costs money. Inefficiency, lost productivity. If everybody's on hold because somebody has to go buy a part, building material or something, then that's lost time. And an acceleration, if you're cracking the whip and you expect the contractor to be finished ahead of schedule, they might have to work overtime, the workers get burnt out, there might be extra costs and all that. So there's a small print at the bottom of my slide. Tip, use daily reports, labor logs, and comparison to baseline schedules to prove and support these costs. Now, the contractor might not even have daily reports, labor logs, or anything like that. So if you're the owner, you're going to want to know the explanation of why things cost so much, right? Contractors, show your work, what to include in your pricing. If it's a change order, right? Take photos before, during, after, to show the actual change. Save your material receipts, proof of added costs, right? Timesheets, right? Make sure you document that. Daily reports, logs, support your timeline and scope. And I always say, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And the contractor goes, oh, wait a minute, it's not in writing, but as you can see, we extended this roof here. Okay, well, that's fine, but what was the agreement? What was the actual agreement? How much did you charge? If you're just throwing it in for free, I don't care, right? But if you're going to charge for it, yeah, let's document everything. What owners should pay and what they shouldn't. Not all change order costs are created equal. What the owner should pay for: reasonable documented expenses tied to actual scope changes, fair labor and material costs backed by receipts and records. The owner should not pay for padded hours, vague markups, or unsupported miscellaneous charges, right? Or whatever the term is going to be used, miscellaneous, extra, additional, allowance, whatever the term they use. Tips for fair reviews. When you're reviewing the change order documentation, compare the change order documentation to the original contract rates. Ask for backup documents. Use a standardized review checklist. Clear documentation equals less back and forth, less arguing, less, oh, I'm not going to pay the contractor because it's not clear. I don't know what I'm supposed to pay. I'm not paying this extra cost. How did this extra cost come up anyway? Now, let me back up when I say compare to original contract rates, because there's different scenarios. So remember the pandemic? Well, of course, we want to forget about it. But the idea here is that they were contracts signed before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, sometimes work couldn't be done, right? It depends. Now, it could have been on hold for various reasons. Now, let's say the work resumed 1 year later or 2 years later, when the pandemic was over, when the coast was clear, okay? Part of the reason why contractors couldn't work during the pandemic was because they didn't have materials. There was a supply chain issue, right? Factories were shut down and they couldn't get building materials and things like that. So year 3 after the pandemic, construction starts and there's a change order, okay? You cannot expect the contractor to agree to the original labor rates specified in the contract, or even the cost of materials, because everyone knows that the cost of materials went up during the pandemic. So in a change order, the contractor says, you know what? There was an increase in the painting costs, so I cannot pay for the increase. It was 15%. So now, homeowner, you're going to be charged with a 15% increase on the cost of painting. And it's hard for the homeowner to say, hey, BS, I'm not going to pay the extra costs. You already agreed to in the contract. If the thing went to court, the courts would rule that due to the pandemic, the contractor has a right to increase their prices, not gouge the owner, right? So they can, the markup, if they prove that the cost of paint increased 50% and they present that, the contractor is entitled to 50% increase. The contractor is not entitled to a 20% or 30% increase, right? But the kicker is the painters' labor rate went up too. So it may not be much, but during that whole pandemic time when no one was working, really, now the labor charge increase. So there's stories about people not even building their house anymore because of the cost increase, and it exceeded their construction loan amount. Or they went ahead and did it and they have to pay an extra $100,000 out of pocket that wasn't part of the construction loan just because of the pandemic. So it was not a good thing. Consultant CMs, which is construction managers, also known as project managers, and attorneys, you're in this too. Construction consultants, architect, engineers, right? Support your position with confidence, with facts, not assumptions. Professionals reviewing change orders focus on clear contract language. What does a contract allow or limit? Detailed documentation, backup for scope, time, and costs. Consistency, align pricing with contract terms and industry standards. Now, on all my projects, this is exactly what I do, and I'm telling you guys the same thing. Cutting down the costs of impacts. Plan smart, address risks early in scheduling and scope, communicate openly, keep all parties in the loop to avoid misunderstandings. That's a key. If you're a contractor and there's a change order, let the client know, let the homeowner know. This is how much it's going to cost to make this change. Have the homeowner or property manager sign it. Then you have it. Then there's no argument later. There was transparency throughout the whole project. Push or pause wisely. What does that mean? You push to get the work done, or if it's not to your satisfaction, stop and say, I want to hold off on doing this until we resolve the situation here. Okay? You're entitled to do that. Avoid impact stacking. Don't let small delays snowball into major disruption. So if the contractor says, I need an answer by next week, Friday, right? Give him an answer, yes or no, because if you delay and don't say anything, it impacts other trades that are, willing to get the job done. Prevention is a lot cheaper than correction. Here's a wrap up. What should you walk away with? Good change orders. Good change order management equals smoother projects and fewer disputes. Understanding pricing methods, unit price, T&M, lump sum, cost plus. Okay, if the contractor is only using one method, like the time and material, you don't have to worry about the other methods, right? Recognize change order type, standard versus impact changes. Know the real costs, delay, inefficiency, acceleration, and how to document them. And then, sorry, I'm trying to move this. Last thing, aim for clarity and fairness for contractors, owners, and everyone in between. I don't have any sides. I don't side with the owner. I don't side with the contractor. I'm on the side that's what's right. And sometimes when I get jobs and I'm hired by the owner and um, what I say backs up the contractor, the owner says, "You're supposed to be on my side, not the contractor's side." And I tell them, I'm on the side of who's right, right? So the contractor's right, I'm going to tell you. And I give real facts. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is make sure you have things in writing, you know what the changes are, and get the information up front. Before the contractor even does the work, make sure you have an agreement as far as how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take, what the impact of the schedule is. Okay. And before I take any questions, comments, or answers, we got a whole bunch of other um, webinars we've done that is available for you to watch at your own time. It's available on our website. What's coming up? We have going to be talking about in the next masterclass webinar information about the LA wildfires. This is just an update to that. Then after that, I'm going to be talking about contractors' punch lists, closeout, legal ramifications, what you should and shouldn't do, and things like that. And then in December, we got holiday safety, talking about electrical fires and things like that. Here's our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. We're updating it every single day. We have so many different websites. So on that website, we have additional websites that deal with contractor licensing, asphalt, waterproofing, painting, a lot of different things. They got so much information there. We got our national expert blogs available on our website. The webinars that I talked to you about, you can watch those. We have a bunch of books available. By the way, if you go to the website and you're sent to an Amazon link and you want a special book, send us an email that we may be able to get it for you for free. I'm also giving out a whole bunch of books for free soon that you can download. So stay tuned, look on social media for that. Now it's a Q&A time. You got questions, we got answers. If you need to get a hold of me, the information is on the screen here, my phone number and email address. So we appreciate the opportunity to present the information. And I'm sure with this subject, there's questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Martin now and see if there's any questions or comments that came up.
Yes, sir, Lance. Good job. This is a good topic. Yeah, we can really look at it from all those perspectives you mentioned and get things done right with the construction. So, yeah, we've had a couple of questions that's come in from our interested viewers in the social media side and the I guess longtime viewers. So let me hit the first one here. They're asking when pricing impact changes like delays or building material costs, what's the best way to show proof that costs really went up? A particular, yeah.
Well, for both sides, mainly for the contractor to keep documentation of how long something took and the cost of materials. So if it's a change order item and it involves 1, 2, or more materials that you need to purchase, right? Showing the client, showing the owner the actual cost of what you paid, that's your documentation already. And if you have a built-in markup of materials by whatever percentage, it's easy to calculate. You know, you bought the light fixture for $200, your markup is 15%, and here's the figure of the change order. Okay, so the cost of the labor, the timesheets are very important because the owner may dispute, say, I was there. I don't think it took the guy 5 hours to install a light fixture, right? So make sure your documentation is correct and it's fair. Don't, if you're already adding overhead profit, don't double it and think you're gonna hide it and get away with it, right? So if you're fair all around, and most homeowners are fair if you explain to them and they understand, you know, it just didn't cost no $200. And sometimes the homeowner would even volunteer to go pick up uh, the mirror or the lock or whatever, just to save costs, right? So that could be done also, but just make sure that if you're a contractor, you have all the documentation. If you're the owner, you want to see all the documentation, right? Or just have it explained to you so you're aware, because homeowners will actually go online and check. It's easy to go online or make a call to Home Depot or City Mill going, okay, here's the product, how much is this? And they tell you how much, and they go, oh, wait a minute, the contractor charged me like 3 times that cost, right? So just be upfront and if it's more time and energy involved, then just make sure it's all in writing so it can be explained. The majority of people, once they understand and review the explanation, they agree to it. And some, because of personalities, never going to agree. They might even not agree to the $200 light fixture. Go, oh, did you actually check around and call like 5 different places to see which one was the cheapest? Right? Or did you use your contractor's discount? Or you know what? Why don't you not install it now? Wait until the thing goes on sale and then go pick it up, then install it. It's like, doesn't make any sense. The contractor, if it's something small, they're not gonna go spend 1 hour calling different places to one, see if it's in stock, and two, to see what the price is. They're gonna just go to wherever they normally go shopping at and just pick it up, right? It's too small of an item to worry about. Now, if it's a huge thing, costs $20,000, yeah, of course they're gonna you naturally expect them to go shop around and get the best price, and you can probably help them too by shopping around. So that's the deal. Make sure either side you got full backup documentation. It's hard to just say, oh, if I was a contractor, okay, Martin, I installed this light fixture. Here's your invoice for $600. Martin's gonna go, oh, wait a minute. I thought the light fixture was only 200. Oh, well, I have to add another 200 because, I'm taking my wife out to expensive dinner tonight or something. That doesn't cut it. So just be upfront and work it out. Sometimes I've seen the contractor tell me after I say, this change order is like ridiculous. Where are you getting all these numbers from? And they tell me, oh, I kind of lost money initially on the job, so I got to make up for it. I go, well, this is not how you make up for it, right? And then how did you lose money in the job? Did you like bid too low? If you did, that's not our problem. So don't gouge the owner later for your mistake, right? Something like that. Or they have to pay extra workers to get the job done faster. Well, that shouldn't be a charge back to the owner, right? That's not included in the contract. So anyway, hopefully I answered that question.
Well, yeah, thanks for all the behind the scene tips too. I just heard there about how they
Sure.
gouge, yeah. Okay, yeah, the next question that came up is for owners reviewing change orders. What's the clearest sign that a price might be padded or unreasonable?
Well, if you have a kind of a feeling that cost is way too high, okay, and that's a red flag, then do more investigation, ask more questions. Why is the thing so high? I saw in the Sunday paper, this bag of concrete was only X amount of dollars, and I don't understand, what the problem was. And the contractor may say, well, I have to use 4 bags of concrete. Oh, okay, well, that explains it, right? So sometimes there's no explanation. And the contractor may say, okay, yeah, I'll discount it by X amount or whatever. So if you feel that it's not right, then have the contractor explain it, right? Or provide more documentation, right? Remember that if you're the homeowner and you saw something on sale, a can of paint or whatever, that's not necessarily what the contractor is gonna buy it, because he already bought the materials already. He's not buying it today unless he ran out, right? So, and he doesn't wait around for a sale and then buy, because you're painting a house. When they have a sale, they might not have a sale on all colors. It may be just white primer, right? Or something. So, and then the quality of paint too. Don't expect the contractor to go buy the cheapest paint. I wouldn't. If I'm painting my house, I don't want the contractor to buy the cheapest paint that's not going to last, right? I want the best paint. So that's where the knowledge and materials come in, and let the contractor explain to you. And it's easy to understand if the contractor says, I initially bid on using very good paint. That's why when I have to paint this other room, it costs this much, because I'm not buying the El Cheapo paint that the average homeowner would buy because they don't know any better, right? You want to make sure it's like the best paint on the market. Unless you're paying for cheap paint, then that's what you're going to get.
Very true. Thank you, Lance. That's a good comment, because
Mhm.
you get what you pay for. And I
Yeah.
notice with the projects that I've worked on, we want quality stuff. So you're not always going to get the cheapest quality
Right.
of paint or whatever. Yeah. So that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, we have one more question that's come in here, and let me get that to you before we run out of time here. Can good communication really prevent change order fights, or are some conflicts just unavoidable?
Well, sometimes it's personality issues. Sometimes the owner just he's so mad at the contractor, he doesn't want to agree to anything. I've seen that happen. And most times, though, it could be documented. It was documented, is clear. When I review things, then it makes sense to me. So um, I get hired as an expert witness on construction disputes, and when I review documentation, I can tell whether the contractor did a good job or not. And sometimes it's very well documented by the contractor, and then my opinion is going to be, yes, the contractor is entitled to get paid for the change order because, for one, they did the work. Number two, they documented what work they did, and they provided their um, backup material costs. And there's a lot of paperwork, but when I go through it and add it up, I go, this makes sense. I don't know why the owner doesn't want to pay. And then that that explanation, in my opinion, is given to the owner, and he's basically forced to pay, forced to agree to pay. Or he may not say, I don't want to, I don't like it, but I'll still pay for it. And then other times there's totally lack of documentation, and then I say, I can't approve the change order because I don't have any backup documentation. I don't know what went on here. I don't know, like, how many hours, man hours they put in, whether they had one guy doing the work or 5 guys. What is the contractor billing for? How did it take so long, right? This is a simple task. What's the explanation? Um, and until they provide that, I'm not about to approve anything. And then there was one case where um, they were supposed to install siding of a townhouse building, and they issued a change order. And after I reviewed it, I said, "Oh, okay, this makes sense." The change order was for um, more cost than the actual siding replacement was. And so the owner said, "Oh, I'm getting ripped off, right, by this contractor." But after I reviewed the photos, what happened in reality was the contractor took off the rotted siding and they're supposed to replace with new siding. When they removed the siding, the wood studs were all termite eaten, and they had to replace all the framing. And that was an additional cost. That wasn't free. That was part of the contract where any additional work would be charged extra. So that was, in that case, that was a valid change order because it was backed up with photos, and I could see how many pieces of lumber they used and the extra time it spent them. I think they took an additional 3 days to reframe the wall before they can even install the new siding. So that 3 extra days of labor work was included in the change order, and it was a um, valid cost to the contractor. So in that situation, right, I can approve it. But on others where there's no backup, I have no idea, right? Like complex spawner repair projects on high-rise buildings, we measure everything. And we have diagrams, measurements, photos, and all that. So once I approve it, um, it's hard for any owner to go, "Oh, I'm not paying for that because how do I know, they actually use that amount of concrete or they use extra rebar or whatever." It's all documented because I don't expect the owner to go on a swing stage up a 40-story building to inspect spawner repair. That's what he hired me. So I do that. And I got photos and measurements and everything. And I require the contractor to submit his photos, measurements, and he can't tell me, "Oh, because you're taking photos, I don't have to take." No, we got total redundancy. So the owner sees the photos, measurements, diagrams from the contractor, and they see the photos and inspections that I did to verify. And that's how I'm able to approve the payment to the contractor. There's no question about it. And if anybody questioned later on, we just pull the documents out and say, "Hey, look, here's the thing." One time on one of my projects, one condo board member questioned the billing, and he said that 1 month they got overcharged by $90, and he wanted an explanation. And somehow the contractor rounded the figures, and there was some GE taxes, and that's how it amounted to that amount. And the contractor was billing for like over $100,000. And when the contractor got the email, it says $90. Geez, I'll just write the guy a $90 check. It would spend more time and energy of me checking, rechecking, and the contractor's checking than the $90, right? So we just said, "Hey, this is how it's calculated," and we agreed that $90 over, but there's an explanation and we can back it up. So eventually, um, the guy kind of went away because it was both myself and the contractor taking a position against his, and then he was kind of micromanaging too much, and then I think the board members kind of gave him the word, and then he stopped attending the board meetings, and we never heard back from him. So I don't know what happened. So anyway, the bottom line is to make sure that the documentation is there and it's fair and honest. That's all I expect from both sides. I don't expect the owner to try and cheat the contractor or the contractor trying to cheat the owner. if that happens, I can tell either by documentation or by just the attitude about, uh, if the owner just says, hey, I don't care what it is, I'm not paying for it. Well, wait a minute, you're the one that ordered the extra window, extra door, extra this. So if you're gonna ask for extra, the expectation is you're gonna pay for extra. It's not free. Nothing is free. You're gonna have to pay for it somehow. And let me interject now. One thing I didn't harp on too much is that sometimes a change order, even if the owner doesn't agree, is required. If the building inspector goes and says, you need to add this, oh, we want a smoke detector here, and it has to be added, the owner is forced to agree to pay. He can't refuse to pay if the contractor says it was required by the building code. So anyway, I know we're out of time, and appreciate everybody who attended and those of you who are on our social media, not on our Zoom platform. Post your comments or questions, and we'll be happy to address them. We promise that we respond to every single person. If you don't get a response, send us an email, then we'll respond to that, because we got so many social media platforms to keep track of. I don't know how Martin does it. And plus that he's still staying awake, so it's a good thing. All right, so please join us for the next masterclass webinar, and we'll see you then. Thank you for attending. Mahalo, aloha.